Hello friends and family, and welcome to the Cave Talk. Too often we see top-level talent rise to the occasion and wonder what that person has done to become the best. We hear about their achievements and what they've accomplished. However, what we don't hear about are the experiences they go through and the habits they've created to get there. Join me, along with my co-host Myles Amine, as we sit down with next-level individuals to hear how they achieve success, conquer their defeats, and the experiences they've encountered along the way. Resilience, grit, and authenticity, you're sure to learn what it takes to become the best version of yourself.
The Cave Talk.
What's going on, friends and family? You're listening to the inaugural episode of the Cave Talk. I'm your host, Jordan Amin. I'm here with the great and powerful, my co-host, Myles Amine.
What's up?
What's going on, Malik? Our first guest is a special one. A lot of experience between the three of us here. You know him as Myles Amine, the recently qualified for the 2020 Olympics. How you doing today, Myles? How you feeling?
Good. Just got a grind of a workout in the cave as usual. You got to be prepared for those workouts.
Yes, the cave. For those who don't know, the cave was started in my garage right around the start of the quarantine. I ordered a few pieces of equipment that luckily came in right before everything happened, when everything went out of stock. And then we were able to put that together. I've been having some of the guys coming in that are training for the Olympics, just training for college wrestling, and even a few high schoolers that are moving on to the next level, getting them prepared, running some high intensity circuits that'll push an Olympian. So they're no joke. And Myles can attest to that. Malik hasn't been in there yet. He skipped out on us today.
Yeah,
I had a long night last night. Wasn't able to push through.
Yeah, the Sunday scaries a little bit. I think
The Sunday scaries.
make it in.
So Myles, what I want to start off today talking about is the obvious, right? You had the 2020 Olympics planned, scheduled. You were prepared for it mentally and physically. And then a little bit earlier this year, around January, February, you got hit with the news that it was going to be postponed, right? And you knew it was coming as soon as you heard the news about everything closing down. How did you transition? Because it had to have been tough. How did you transition mentally and physically to know that now I have to prepare a whole nother year? That can be draining for some people, and you're able to push through that pretty easily. So how did you prepare for that?
I think I try to look at things from a positive perspective, and really, even if I don't look at things from a positive perspective, it's really just, it's all, an uphill for me, just looking at, it being postponed. I think I'm pretty young for the weight class for pretty much just any international wrestling. You look at the average age is about 27 years old. So, being 23, just turned 23, one positive thing is I'm going to have another year of experience just to grow physically, and as a man, and just maturity wise. And that's one really big positive. Another big positive that a lot of people really don't even think about is the fact that a lot of things got canceled. Just whether it was the NCAA championships, a lot of, March Madness, a lot of sports in the spring and summer. So for it to be postponed was kind of a blessing in disguise, because, with this coronavirus thing going on, there's just so many things just getting the red X right over it. Just, it's like it was some people's most important event in their life, just, wiped away from them in an instant. So that's another positive. And then, finally just being surrounded with some great athletes, some great coaches, just getting another year to develop with them is just something that I'm looking forward to, and something that I really just can't take for granted. I mean, it's just going to make me that much better, that much more prepared for next summer. Right. We just got Alex Daringer in the room, and between him and Dom Abinator, who's has a really good shot of qualifying for Tokyo, and he's somebody who's been there from the beginning, big help in my process of qualifying, and Logan Massa, Cameron Amin. So, all those guys, just being able to train with them, and then Sergey Beloglazov, Sean Mormet, the rest of the machine coaching staff, like, you're talking about like a world-class
Yeah, that's no joke. Between if you add up all the accolades and you put together everything that all those people accomplished, it would be a hell of a resume.
Absolutely. And it's funny because even yesterday I'm looking at a picture and I saw, Sean, Coach Bourmet, with a picture with Henry Cejudo.
I was looking at that same picture last night. Yeah.
Yeah. And I didn't even know Sean. Sean's just such a humble guy that, he doesn't really tell you the guys he's coached, but he's coaching a UFC champ, Olympic champ.
Right.
And so to think I'm sitting over here like, that's my coach,
right.
So it obviously adds a lot of confidence and I'm pretty damn excited to be able to work in that room for another year.
What about the Yale Strangler?
Yeah. I of course, I got to give credit to Nick Simmons,
who actually was the last guy to beat Henry Cejudo in the sport of wrestling.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean,
which is crazy.
Yeah, if you ever get a chance, you got to go watch that match. It's the guy just has technique like nobody I've ever seen.
Yeah,
he's a creative,
definitely
mind
unorthodox.
In the sport of wrestling. He brought creativity to wrestling,
And he's deceiving too because he doesn't look as strong as he is, but he's super strong, right?
Yeah,
especially in positions.
I mean, I was wrestling with him this week. He was just showing some moves on me at practice, and dude, he choked me out. Like he weighs like 130
lives up to
pounds.
his name.
I'm like 200, and he can choke you out from any position.
Right? Yeah, and you're not a joke to be choking out either.
No,
so
not at all. So yeah, between all those coaches and whatnot, and then. The last thing I would say to that question, just being process oriented, I think,
right.
Something that I take a lot of pride in. It's just like, I think the results are something that you got to have. Like you can't just say results don't matter, because results do matter in every aspect of life. But just the process of things and being able to, appreciate the grind. Like this morning, even for example, coming here, I don't necessarily have to do that because. Nobody does, because we don't have competition for a really long time. So I just love it. I love the grind. So, being able to come here and get that done, that's all part of just being process oriented.
Right. I mean, it goes back to we talk about Sean Bourmet. It goes back to even what Sean Bourmet installed in us while wrestling at Michigan. And maybe that's why we both had the same thought process. But just buying into what you're doing, right? And just being able to accept the fact that your body is going to be pushed to those limits and your body is going to be hurting and aching, right? And that's you feeling yourself get better. And I think that's something that a message to young athletes too, right? Because when was it when you personally felt like you started to think like that? Because I know in high school, right, you didn't place as a freshman, and then you came and you took third, and then you won it 2 years after that, right? So you went from not placing to placing top 3 to winning it twice and taking out Justin Oliver, who was a hell of a wrestler in college, but even so in the state of Michigan too. In high school, he ran the show. So there was definitely a flip in mindset. There had to have been when you made those leaps and bounds at CC under Mitch Hancock and that change in mindset. So if you can talk about that change in mindset and just accepting the fact that you're going to go to a dark place and that's what's going to get you better.
Yeah, I think that was something that I learned, from just growing up in a wrestling room with, our dads together.
Right.
It was something that was just a value that was instilled at a pretty young age.
Right.
Just that, no pain, no gain kind of mentality. And I think, my dad always says this, even, we make fun of him for how much he says it, but there's a lot of truth to it, is you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable.
Facts.
And it's something, like I said, we made fun of him, but then, the older I get, the more it resonates. Like, there's really no good thing comes easy.
Right.
And especially, I think it was kind of knocked right back into me and kind of, re-emphasized when I went to Catholic Central. I think that there's something about being in that room as a freshman.
Right.
And you could be, one of the best 8th graders in the country, which I wasn't at all, by the way. But, you could be number 1 8th grader coming into high school, and you go into that CC wrestling room and you're not going to be, at the top of the food chain.
Right.
It's just, that's how it goes. It's just so much competitiveness in that room.
Right.
And not only that, but they find every way to humble you. You know, it's just something about the mentality that Mitch Hancock and the rest of that coaching staff, Biondo have. It's just they're gonna grind you,
Right.
and it doesn't matter how good of a wrestler you are. They love making good wrestlers, but I mean the motto of the school itself is like goodness, discipline, and knowledge. Like they want you to be a disciplined person.
Right.
So that doesn't come with just being talented. That comes with the work and all those other aspects of the grind. And so that was definitely that mantra was taken pretty seriously by our wrestling team.
Right.
And then once I got to Michigan, it was all, I mean, again, kind of it was learned by then. I think the coaches could attest to that, is the fact that every once in a while, I don't care who you are, you need somebody to kind of humble you again.
Yeah, of course.
And kind of put you into place and say, hey, you're not working hard enough. And
Right.
I think I definitely got that at Michigan, don't get me wrong. But I think by the time I got to college, I was so, focused on that mindset that it almost was like muscle memory at that point. Like
Right.
I liked being in that dark, deep waters.
Right. And that's a huge testament to CC, Mitch Hancock, Steiny, and Biondo on preparing these guys for college wrestling, because like you said, it was already learned. You might have had reminders here and there from the staff that you had at Michigan, but going into college, it was already learned. And Malix, you were the same way, right? You went to CC as well, and that learned behavior helped you guys out going into the next level, because it is such a culture shock in stepping in from high school into college, where in high school you'll have like a random slouch, right? And you can have those easy matches. In college, it's almost never that you have a match that you go into with the mindset thinking like this is going to be an easy one. You know what I mean?
Never.
So no, that's good. And that's a huge shout out, like I said, to CC Wrestling and how they prepare their guys to get to the next level. I mean, they send guys to the next level every year, right? I mean, they had a huge recruiting class with Cameron and Kevon Davenport a year ago, and now they have another one with Gilchard and Mark Schaefer and all these other guys, and Josh Edmond, and stepping up to the next level. Real quick, Myles, I want to transition into talking about in the beginning of the episode. You mentioned being such a young age, qualifying for the Olympics, right? Some people have set their lifelong goals, and it takes them into their 40s, 50s. Most times, people never accomplish them, right? People set these lifelong goals for themselves, and I know that this is something that you set at an early age, right? Because growing up with you, hearing about wanting to wrestle in the Olympics, we all thought the same thing. Following, our grandfather wrestled in the Olympics and took third, was a bronze medalist, and then both of our fathers, wrestled on a few teams and alternate teams to pursue their goals, right? But at 22 years old, you became an Olympian, which is a really young age to accomplish a lifelong goal, right? And it's not every day that somebody qualifies for the Olympics. We were talking about it last night. I think the statistics were like 1 in every 709,000 people qualify for the Olympics, and that out of the whole world, right? So feeling like you accomplished a lifelong goal at 22 years old, what does that feel like for people that have never been there before, right? And I know that's tough to put that feeling into words, right? But if you could touch on what that feels like to finally feel like it all paid off for you.
It's funny because I'm just somebody that, I don't never get too high and I never get too low. So but I'm gonna be honest. When I qualified, I think
never
I got
seen
too
this guy
high.
cry.
I think I didn't cry.
No, that's what I said. I said I've never seen him cry, man. This guy's emotionless.
Yeah,
the guy qualifies for the Olympics. He's a straight face with the ones up. I would be in tears on the mat, like thanking God.
I think even though I didn't shed any tears, I think in my semifinals match I brought this up a few times, but I think I was a little bit, like I said, I got too high. I had to wrestle the best guy in the world the next match.
That's
and I think
true.
that my excitement got the best of me in that match.
Yeah.
And but it was a really really good feeling. I mean, it's funny because I've had it as a lifelong goal, but it probably took me until about 2 months before the World Championships to realize that this is something that I can really make happen. After coming off the European Games, I got a bronze medal, and right when I got home, could have taken that time, and I did take a couple days off, but I made sure right when I got home, I took out my notebook and I wrote some notes down, and some goals and how to get there. And what the very one at the top of that page was like qualify for the Olympics, place top 3, win a medal at the Worlds. And so I looked at it literally every day, and I kept looking at it before my practices, and before I went to bed in the morning. I swear I had that notebook like glued to me. And so it was almost like, it's when they say that corniness of like, when you envision a goal so many times that when you accomplish it, it's like kind of it's what do I want to use? It's like it's almost not as sweet as you would think it would be, because you've already seen it happen so many times in your head.
Right.
It's anticlimactic.
Right.
And so that was a little bit of it, but then I get my draw at the Worlds, and that goal that I was looking at, like that's when I really had to dig down
Tough
deep
draw,
and say
yeah.
like, hey, I just got to have absolute faith in my goal, and know that there was a reason what I was working for. And even though I got to confront the brutal facts right here that like it's not going to be an easy path,
Right.
I still got to have that faith, but confront the facts that I got to freaking wrestle my butt off.
Right.
And so that's kind of what it was. Is I the path that I had a guy that I lost to a couple months ago, multiple time world medalist, first round. And so then that path just got tougher and tougher as I wrestled some Olympic medalists, some world medalists throughout that tournament.
Right.
But I got the job done, and like I said, I just had that wavering faith that was just looming in the back of my head. And once I accomplished that, and like you said, at such a young age, it's something.
Yeah, 22 is freaking so young to accomplish.
Yeah,
that goal.
but I told I even told Coach Mormet this. I was talking about the Olympics and stuff coming up, and I think we were talking about maybe whether it was weight class or something like that, but he said, it was about the Olympic red shirt. That's what it was. So we were talking about Olympic red shirt, and he said, like, why do you want to take an Olympic red shirt? And this was before the World Championships, and I said, because, I want to qualify for the Olympics and stuff, and, and I just want to put everything I have into that.
Right.
And he said, well, you have such a long career ahead of you. I think you're looking short-sighted right now, and I think that it's just like, I don't know if you should necessarily take an Olympic red shirt, because if you don't qualify or something like that, but not necessarily. He had a lot of faith in me, and I said, but long story short, I just told him, I said, I have to be short-sighted if I want to accomplish my goals.
Of course. Yeah.
Like if I think too long-term, then I'm not going to push myself as hard in the practice room, and I'm not going to, that last 30 seconds of match, I won't dig deep, because I know maybe my career is a little bit longer. I can accomplish this at a later time. So that was a big thing too, was just being short-sighted in my goals, and like, hey, you gotta obviously know that there's a journey to things, but you also have to have like a sense of urgency.
Right.
There's got to be some short-term goals that are pretty lofty goals that you got to be working towards that every day. It's not something you can do once a week.
Right. Yeah, because everybody sets goals, right? I mean, you can rate that you want to be the president of the United States on a piece of paper, but it's not just writing down the goal. It's taking the steps, like you just said, taking the steps to, maybe it's long steps, maybe it's baby steps, whatever it is, but taking steps to accomplish that goal. That's what's important, right? Yeah. Is that something that you would write down too? Because I never actually experienced writing my goals down until recently, right? I stepped away from wrestling and turned the chapter on that right after a long career. And then that was when I decided that I wanted to start writing my goals down to be where I wanted to be in life, right? And accomplish things. And one of them was to buy a house at a young age, and writing it down helped me. But I also wrote down the small steps that I would take to get to that goal, right? Like you just talked about. So is that something that's important for young athletes or even older athletes that haven't done this yet? Because it is such a cliche thing. You hear write your goals down, but it's not the importance of just writing it down. It's taking the steps to get there. So if you could touch on that.
I think there's no right answer to that. I think it depends on how disciplined of a person you are.
Right.
And that's something you got to do some soul searching for. Like, if you're disciplined enough to know that the goal itself is gonna motivate you, then that's great. Then maybe you only have to write the goal down, and you'll just naturally gravitate towards the things that are gonna push you towards that.
Right.
But then there's other people that, like me, I even, and Malik, he's gonna laugh because when I bring this up, but I have like a little bit of ADHD. Like,
no, he doesn't.
Like, to some extent, like
compared to me, not compared to me.
Yeah, because Malik's like
I have to write stuff down.
ADHD to the max. Right. He's got to write stuff down. But for me, even like, I can get off task really easy. I like to focus on a lot of things at once and try to be a multitasker. But so I like to write things down and just focus on maybe doing like 3 things a day that'll push me towards this goal.
Yeah,
like that's kind of how I am. But I think the more the better. And that's just for me personally. I think the more I can write down, the more I can put structure into something, that's a great thing. But some people, it's like you structure them too much and then they blow up. It's like, it's just too much. They like to be creative. They like to have some flexibility in their day, and it actually will help them push them towards that goal versus, trying to be too structured. Yeah. It'll burn them out.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
I think there's a little bit of a catch-22 on that.
Yeah, I agree with you. So what I have a question for you. So you're an avid reader. You like to read a lot of books. I've seen you read. Do you think having that mindset of always learning can carry over into wrestling? Do you think that, reading and growing your knowledge has an impact on your wrestling and in your life?
Yeah, I do for sure. I think I'm old school. That's why I like to read. I think.
Well, your dad's old school. My dad
reads.
He
reads the paper.
Malik, though, if you talk to my dad and Malik,
we don't read.
No.
We listen.
It's funny because my dad is obviously like, and I don't know about your dad if he reads.
No, my dad doesn't.
He's a front. My dad's a front to back guy.
And it's like, so that, obviously they did something right, but they don't like to read.
Right.
But it's funny because obviously they just learn in different ways. For me, I think I've even started to expand my horizon into what we're doing right now, is to listen to some podcasts, get some other people's perspective. Yeah. And listen to what they're doing, trying to learn from some of the people that I look up to, or some people that are extremely successful in multiple industries. Mm-hmm. So whether it's listening to a podcast or just reading, that obviously helps. I think it's like, it's a no-brainer that helps it helps in my wrestling, I think, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
And I just being able to, like I said, good habits, there's like this concept of like Keystone Habits. In one of the books I read, now that we're going to talk about reading, it's Power of Habits. And it says like a Keystone Habit is essentially, a habit, a good habit that can change all your other habits. Yeah. And I really believe in that. I think the more good habits you have, you're just naturally going to eliminate bad habits. So for me, reading's a good habit. And then it turns out if I read, I might watch some wrestling technique. Right. I might go get a workout in. And then I start eating healthier. Like, all those can lead and segue into one another. So, I think to answer your question, it's definitely something that I would advocate for and say it helps.
Well, it's funny because when you go to school, and I think a lot of people can attest to this, and you're used to reading books for a sense of, like either studying or just collecting information. I don't think people think like you. They think reading, is boring. But having that mindset of always, being able to learn from books, podcasts, whatever it is, I think, you said that's an important cornerstone to your wrestling. I think, that needs to be heard. So. Yeah. Seriously. I even started picking up on some of Myles' habits. I tried reading books. It wasn't really for me. I'm still trying. I started the audio book. But be serious. No, I did. I actually subscribed to Amazon Audible. I listened to a couple books. It's a lot easier, but everybody has their own way of doing it. But I think that even like Myles said, that cornerstone habit, I think that's important because even when I was reading, I'm like, I might as well clean my room. I might as well do this instead of, maybe sitting on Call of Duty for 5 or 6 hours wasting time. Mm-hmm. But it's just so funny when your mind is focused on something, and that kind of comes back what he's saying with your goals and writing your stuff down. Like, I'm a big vision board guy. I put everything, in front of me on something I'm going to see every day, and you visualize. And I think like what Myles is saying, back to the cornerstone thing, is like it makes you want to do the right things. And obviously it's led to a lot of your success, and I'm glad that you address that.
Yeah, it's important too to add to that, like just having awareness, right? Being able to be aware of the fact that you do have goals, and like Malik said, putting it in front of your face, just to know that, to remind you every day, because it's easy to forget. You have 50,000 things that go on every day, right? And it's easy to lose track and forget of what you're actually chasing, what you're like currently pursuing, right? So having something in front of you every day just to remind you, whether it's on your phone, whether it's on a vision board, whether it's your significant other, putting you to the test when you wake up to say, hey, what's getting accomplished today, right? And that kind of leads into what I want to talk about next, Myles, is the fact of surrounding yourself with the people that you want to become, right? Both of our fathers taught us that from a young age, which I think was because our jiddo, which means grandfather, taught them from a young age, right? And surrounding yourself with people that you want to become. And I can attest to that because I've surrounded myself with people that I never wanted to become, and I found myself starting to fall into that trap and start to lose track of what I'm actually focused on, and it negatively impacted me, right? I had a really tough first semester at Michigan, and grades wise, I started hanging around with people that they weren't chasing the same things I was chasing, and then I started to remember what we learned growing up, being able to surround myself with people that are important, and people that are actually doing things that I want to do, right? Because it's not fair to say that somebody's a loser or somebody's lazy, because those might be the things that person is choosing to pursue, right? And maybe your values don't line up. Maybe you want to pursue different things. So talking about, because you surround yourself with some really successful people, right? And we all do. But how important is that for young athletes, old athletes, and not even athletes, just people that want to accomplish things in their life and aren't there yet?
Oh, it's everything. It's funny you bring this up. I always think when we talk about this, obviously I think of, our dad saying that from a very young age, and then even somebody taking it a step further, who is, Sean Bormat, Coach Bormat, saying, I remember when we were sitting in the locker room, and I'll never forget this because it changed my perspective on the whole thing, is like, there's always levels, like, right? You climb these levels, and then, you're always at different stages in your life. So like being at Michigan, you're among elites, right? Like that's the thought process. Like I got into the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, and, it's probably, you're probably, now part of the 1% of the world because, it's the number one public university in the United States. Yep. And then to have Sean Bormet say, we're sitting in the room and it's welcome week, which for those that don't know is like, it's college's first week. It's
your first taste of college.
It's your first taste of college for the freshmen coming in. And even if you're, a senior, like you're back, right? It's the first week of school, and there's no classes. There's no homework assignments. So there's parties everywhere. There's a lot of people making a lot of dumb decisions. And so he said, he pretty much just put it this way. He said, there's, we're at a pretty elite university. There's, you guys probably, think of yourselves as, some, elite people, but there's a lot of mediocre decisions going on campus. And there's a lot of mediocre people. Yep. Even though, you think maybe, you can get away with it because you're at Michigan or they're at Michigan, don't let that kid you. There's still, you don't surround yourself with these mediocre people. Right. And you can spot a mediocre person by the decisions they make. So, and I thought about that, and I was like, there really is, like, you always got to be constantly trying to better yourself, and and the people around you, same thing, trying to make them better. And I think, and I think people change too, like you said. It's like, you can be somebody that maybe needs some growing up, and then you yourself can maybe I didn't want to hang out with this guy, but then you're like, hey, he came around actually. He grew up a lot, and he's actually picking up on my values, so somebody I want to be around. And so that concept is just something that's so important. I think. I mean, it's really gonna shape who you are. Right. Even like Will Smith, like a guy like that said, go look at your text message in your phone and look at the last 5 people, your 5 text messages, and what text messages were sent, and that's going to describe you know, what your future is going to be like. You know, were they negative? Were they positive messages? Are those people positive people in your life? Are they giving you energy? Or are they taking away energy from you?
Yeah, that's huge.
So I think, to answer that question, is just it's everything.
Right.
Like if you're surrounded, like it's very rare that somebody that's,
because it's real. Because I think that there's people out there that don't believe that's true because
they think they're better than it.
Right.
They think they can overcome that.
Yeah, exactly. Right? And it's super important too to highlight something you just said, because you're not selfish. You're not a selfish person, right? It's never just all about you. I mean, you qualified for the Olympics. I remember texting you and congratulating you, and then you were like, "Well, it's not going to be about me because you're getting married in like 2 months. So it's about you." And then after you get married, then it can be about me. So like, I mean, you literally just qualified for the Olympics, and you're going out of your way to make sure that you still have excitement for me, right? So like, not selfish at all. But something you just said also proves that, because surrounding yourself with people was super important. But you mentioned too that as soon as you feel like you're getting better, you're getting to the point where you want to be, you mentioned it's super important to help others get there with you, right?
100%.
And because you're going to have people that have that same concept you did of, I want to surround myself with Myles Amine because that's who I want to become, right? Just like you said, I want to surround myself with Sean Bourmet because I want to become like Sean Bourmet, or I want to become like Sergey, whoever you're training with, right? And that's super important too. That's almost more important than yourself, you know, getting to that level on yourself.
I think that's like, it kind of brings you back to, you know, how you got there.
Right.
Because you wouldn't have had that had you not, like, it's not like we grow up being the greatest,
right?
You know, or like grow up, you know, being an Olympian or something like that. Like, I needed people to, same thing. Like, I wasn't on their level and they had to help me get up there. Like, there was probably some bad decisions I was making, or I wasn't working hard enough, or wasn't doing the right things. And then they had to say, like, hey, like, you know, don't go down that road. Just follow me. Keep following me.
Right.
And I think that there are people in my life that there's people that, you know, maybe made some bad decisions. And it's not like I can't be friends with them because of that. Yeah. It's just like, I have to hope that I can, you know, be such a good influence that they are like, hey, I'd rather follow that path. Like, you know, I'm tired of doing these things. They're not worth it for me.
Because eventually you get burnt out, right? I mean, people, you can make so many decisions that you think are good, but may end up being bad. And eventually those bad decisions, they get to you, no matter how long it takes. And eventually you got to find somebody that's going to help you come out of that path. So being able to be selfless, and I think that's something that people forget about nowadays, is there are a lot of selfish people out there, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there is more positive than negative. You know, the media tells us otherwise, right? That's why it's super important to know what you're listening to. But being able to share the secrets and, you know, the solutions to your failures with others is super important to make the world a better place, to make the next guy underneath you be able to accomplish more than what you did, right?
Yeah.
And you've kind of done that with my brother Cameron, right? I've led Cameron by example through most aspects of life, but where I couldn't do it in wrestling, you were able to do that, and you took Cameron underneath your wing, and now he's training to become something special at Michigan. And even beyond this, after Michigan and the Olympic Games. So, you know, taking Cam under your wing, does it remind you of yourself when you were, you know, trying to get to where you're at right now, or how's that been with training with Cam?
Yeah, it's been great. I'll tell you what, on Tuesday, I think he almost kind of, you know, took it to me. Yeah. So I think I'm trying to think of what it is, but, you know, he's gotten to the level where it's not only like I'm teaching him, but he's starting to compete against me.
And that's what you want, right?
That's exactly what you want. And I had a ton of people, you know, when I got into Michigan that were, you know, between you guys, you and Malik, obviously, just, you know, you guys taking me under your wing, but then in the wrestling room, obviously, I outgrew both of you. So, right. You know, being the youngest, it didn't help a ton that I was the biggest too. So there was still some other people that I would give a lot of credit to for kind of taking me under the wing. One of them was, you know, Jake Herbert. Yeah. So I think it's crucial to have somebody to kind of coach you through that, and just, you know, somebody that's been through it all,
right,
to kind of walk you down that path,
right.
You know, and not just wrestling. I think that's something that's really important to think about too, is like,
yeah, all this relates to anything in life. It's not just wrestling, right?
And it's funny because, you know, the other guy that I was taking advice from was a phenomenal wrestler, but our conversations rarely were about wrestling. It was Ryan Bertine.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I wanted to get into the Raw School of Business. That was it was almost even a bigger goal than my wrestling goals as a freshman.
Yeah, of course.
And I would talk to him like all the time about school and just, you know, some just life and whatnot. And he kind of mentored me outside of wrestling, where I had, you know, so I had two guys that were really crucial to me in my freshman year. I would talk to them all the time. And
right.
yeah, it's really important to have mentors in your life, I think, and just people that can take you under their wing. And that's something that I think I don't know personally, obviously, because I'm not there yet, but I just kind of, my view as how we, you know, kind of look at it as a society is like something that we think is an adolescent thing. Like,
right.
You know, we think that like after you turn like a certain age, you don't need any more mentors. Like you have to be the man of the house.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you can't be looking up to people anymore. Like you can't have, you know, heroes, which
right.
I think is kind of it's
unhealthy mindset.
It's overrated.
It's a false narrative. Yeah, it's not true.
It's a bad mindset to have. I think you should have mentors even when I could be 70 years old and I could have a mentor that's, you know, 75.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I think it's
or younger than you, right?
Or younger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
You're right. Like somebody that
because I don't think age. I mean, people will say that wisdom comes with age, and it definitely, there's definitely truth to that. But there's people that, you know, you can compare yourself, if you're just comparing yourself to people that are older than you. I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean anything.
No, especially once you get to a certain age, like
right,
40 versus 45. Like,
what's the difference?
Yeah,
yeah.
You know, I could be really mentored by a 40-year-old, and I'm 45, and that guy might be the expert in the industry. So why wouldn't I listen to him?
Yeah,
right. Yeah,
it'd be stupid not to.
Yeah,
and another thing too that we talked about yesterday when we were texting back and forth, that kind of resonates with all of this is the importance of just accepting those being able to accept the tough conversations too from your mentors, right? Because you have to be willing, right? You have to buy in. We said that today when we were working out, right? Buy in. We learned that from wrestling at Michigan, and even you guys wrestling at CC. It's important to buy into the process. So if you're accepting a mentor in your life to help to guide you, right? You got to buy into that, because if you don't, you're going to find yourself struggling every day with a mental battle between yourself, right? Because the only person that can beat you is you, right? We heard that throughout our whole life.
Yeah.
Wrestling, offside the mat too, just in all aspects of life, the only one that can beat you is you. Because not necessarily speaking, it's tough for yourself to accept a mentor in your life if you're not willing to have those tough conversations. Yeah. So I'm sure you had those tough conversations when becoming, you know, a 3-time All-American, you know, pursuing a national title now and an Olympic title. How important is that too, to be able to accept those tough conversations, the people telling you you're doing something wrong?
Yeah, that I think that's right there is the hardest part about having a mentor or somebody that you look up to, is they're not going to tell you what you want to hear all the time.
Right.
And, you know, there's that self-serving bias that's always in your head that's like, yeah, this guy doesn't know what's best for me, or, you know, like all those, it's kind of funny. I don't know if this is obviously gets down to like the core, the biological, you know, aspect of us is like, for some reason we crave like comfortability, right? Like we like to be in that comfort zone, and sometimes like that's where like that weakness, those bad habits, like all that stuff sits. So it's like it's naturally hard to have somebody to tell you that that's not where you want to be.
Right.
So yeah, to be able to sit there and buy in, but I think that's what, like a good mentor knows that, you know, somebody's not going to like initially want to listen to all the things you have to say. So it's just like constantly staying on a guy, even if maybe he doesn't respond to your text or doesn't return your call, or, you know, he tells you to shut up or be quiet when when you're yelling at him in practice, saying, "Come on, push through this last sprint," or this last rep, or after a match he's in your ear saying you had more to get it given or put in out there,
right? Or even your boss telling you that you need to stay after because you need to get some things done, right? It's not just like we said, it's not just wrestling. But,
and you can exactly that's experience that you have even over me. Like it's like that's something that. But I think that you can apply that to all areas of your life.
Right. And I think it's important, too, for people to realize, and I'm very stubborn, and you know that, Malik knows that. Yeah. I think it's just the Amin blood.
I know.
We're all pretty stubborn.
Everybody's pretty stubborn.
Tough head, right? And sometimes we do think we know best, right? So for me, it was like accepting the fact that I don't know, right? And that somebody does know more than me. And like you said, in the business world, it's a lot of people hear that athletes make really good employees, really good businessmen, businesswomen, the next people to run the world, right? And there's a lot of truth to that because you're coachable, right? And I think that's something you learn from having a mentor and accepting the fact that they're going to tell you what's right from wrong. They may not necessarily always be right, but most of the time, more often than not, they've been there before, and they're telling you based off of experience. So it's super, super important. Young athletes, older athletes, just people that are trying to achieve success in their life, to be able to have that mentor and accept the fact that they're going to be told no, they're going to be told they're doing stuff wrong, and be coachable. Because if you're not coachable, you're never going to get better.
Yeah, 100%. And I think if there's anybody that cares the most about you, it's like your youth coaches, your high school coaches, even college coaches, but especially down at that youth level, because a lot of the times if you're a high school wrestling coach, let's just keep wrestling obviously as the subject, you're not getting paid a ton of money to do that.
No.
So they obviously care, and they're invested in you. They're investing their time and their energy, and they're not getting a lot out of it.
No, for the most part, you're not really there's no better way to say this, but you're not like anything yet. You're just a wrestler who's going through the motions.
100%.
So they're not like trying to live through you, because you're not like a national champion.
Yeah, they don't get any of the credit.
There's
it's like by the time maybe they do get a little bit of credit if you build like a national powerhouse as a high school program. But a lot of the times, the guys don't really reach their peak until college. Like that's when wrestling becomes extremely popular.
Or even after college too.
Or after.
Yeah.
But I'm saying more so that the coaches, the high school coaches, don't get the credit for that.
No, they don't.
Neither do the youth. More so.
Even youth, more so. So like,
they're just forgotten.
If there's anything like we're talking about this mentor, the whole mentor thing and buying in. It's like that is so crucial. Is like as a kid is to listen to your high school coaches, or listen to if your dad is involved and he's telling you to go to those practices or something. Like there's a reason behind all that. It's not selfish.
They can't want it more than you do.
Exactly.
Too. Yeah.
That's important.
Right.
So,
no, that's good. So just to kind of switch topics a little bit, going back to the Olympics and the topic of that, because that is such a fresh and monumental achievement, right? Your decision process, because you could have wrestled for USA, you could have wrestled for
the tough
Lebanon.
Questions are coming now, Myles.
You wrestled for Lebanon, and obviously you wrestled for San Marino. So the decision process between all three teams, because you have we both know it, and everybody else, people listening know it. They've seen the media where people kind of call you out and on the fact that both of you guys even on the fact that you didn't wrestle for the United States, right? And it's crazy they do, but touching on your decision process, on what team you decided to wrestle for, and then how you deal with all the negative energy that people, instead of supporting you, they don't support you, and they're almost like out to get you because you didn't wrestle for the United States.
Just the fact that I have an opportunity to wrestle for three countries just shows is that obviously, I have, it's just multi-diverse, background. It's so great to have, live in the United States and be able to have family that immigrated from Lebanon, that immigrated from San Marino. And, it's something I take a lot of pride in. Like, I'm obviously a U.S. citizen first. This is where I live. This is the land of the free.
Of course.
And, and I stand for everything that, the United States preaches more than any other country. But when it came to wrestling, a big thing that played the factor was, one, Lebanon, obviously, our grandfather wrestled in the Olympics for Lebanon. So, yeah, that's like there's a lot of legacy behind that. So would I have wanted to do that? Yeah, maybe, that there were so many good opportunities. It was like, 3 opportunities that were all great options. So I couldn't have gone wrong. But, Dom Abinator, he kind of beat me to the punch with Lebanon. I mean, we're both at the same weight. So he's wrestling 86 kilos, and his dad did a lot of work.
You're training for the same club.
Yeah, training for the same club. And, his dad had a house in Lebanon, so it made it a lot easier for him to get his citizenship and whatnot. He had a lot of ties in Lebanon, whereas our family, we have ties in Lebanon, but they're older ties.
Right.
And so when you look at San Marino, on the other hand, is like, I already have citizenship there. Mm-hmm. All I need to do is get my passport. I was born with citizenship, so way easier process. And just the same thing. It's just because my grandpa on my mom's side didn't wrestle, at all, or didn't wrestle for them, doesn't mean that
there's not heritage.
Yeah, there's not heritage behind it. I mean, he's the kind of guy that whenever I would tell people I'm Italian, he'd be the first guy to step in and correct me and say, no, you're San Renese. Yeah. Like, I'd say
super proud to be.
Yeah, he's a proud man for that. So, obviously I'm excited to represent something like that, something with that much, somebody that has that much pride, there's that much heritage involved. So, so obviously it came down to the decision. Now we're breaking it down between US and San Marino. And, it wasn't an easy decision at all. I mean, I already had teammates who paved the way between Stevan Micic, Dave Habit, and then, Dom's in the process. So,
right.
It was nice to have people that had already done it and had some experience, but still there's that underlying factor of I don't want to be I wrestled for the U.S. in high school, back my sophomore year, and I don't want to be considered like a traitor or something. I didn't even think that would happen, by the way. It's kind of
well, it's just silly.
I'll touch on that in a second. But really, so, and then it came down to how long, what's the longevity of my wrestling career going to be? Because that's going to play a big factor. I'm obviously, the U.S. is a much longer circuit. You got to go through a few tournaments. And then, you got to win a lot more matches just to get that international experience for a lot of the time.
Right.
And you look at the guys that are winning on that U.S. circuit, very rarely, we had Snyder and Cox who were, kind of the anomalies, but most of the guys are graduated from college. It's really hard to balance that college, trying to train folk style all the time and then jump into a freestyle circuit.
Of course.
So, I just did what was best for me at the end of the day. I said, I might not wrestle past my senior year in college, past 2020. Right. And so at the time, that was my thought process. And I was like, well, what's going to give me the best opportunity then? Right. And San Marino, everything was locked and loaded, ready to go. Right. Besides, doing some things, which my mom and again, my mom and Bormet, huge shout out to them because they put together, a lot of emails in foreign languages, and all that stuff, Italian, they're talking to some people in Switzerland and whatnot, the UWW. And besides, all that back work though, it was pretty easy process. So,
right.
And then really, I got wrestled at the European Championships last year and right away, and I'm wrestling in one of the best tournaments in the world. And that was right after my college season.
Right.
So,
and I think it's you just brought up something too that even made me forget my words just now. But the fact that I want people to understand too that you didn't just join the team, right?
No.
That didn't have wrestlers, and now all of a sudden you're an Olympian. You had to go and wrestle these guys that were world medalists, world champs. You wrestled the number 1 guy in the world, right?
Yeah, one pound for pound,
arguably,
arguably,
right? He's probably one of the most famous guys in Europe, right? Comparable to soccer players, and or should I say football? And And you had to go through that gauntlet. So I think it's important for people to know too. It's not just like you just stepped on San Marino's team and you were just like, well, now I'm an Olympian, right? You had to wrestle these guys that they were world beaters, right?
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I had a lot of guys licking their chops before they had to wrestle me.
Yeah,
because they're looking at the bracket, seeing San Marino. Like, I've been on this circuit for 8 years, never seen San Marino. Like, this guy must be horrible. You just, and then it's a great feeling to go out there. I remember even at the European Championships, it was like I wrestled this guy from Georgia, Amin. He was world bronze back in like 2016, and the look of just disbelief on his coach's faces after like the scoreboard, the time went out and my hand got raised. Like they were like so confused that this guy just lost to
San Marino.
Right.
Like, and so, yeah, I mean, that is the thing that is not talked about a lot by, Flow Wrestling or whoever else, is that like I'm beating guys that the US guys weren't beating.
Yeah.
Like at the World Championships, like we're talking like, I had an opportunity to wrestle Downey in the quarterfinals,
right?
And he had lost to the guy from Germany,
right? And well, never in your life. If it's not even about. If people think it's about ducking, they're
no.
Yeah, you can't duck in the European circuit. Right. I mean, there's every guy you wrestle is going to be good. Right. I mean, they're either a world medalist, European medalist, there's something. So it's just so funny, like how people talk, and I'll wrap it up at this, but they say that, you don't have quality opponents, and some guys, above you have beaten better guys, but in reality, your credentials speak for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, I don't even really need to comment on like the media is always going to be the media.
The media is media.
Of course.
I mean, the media is like honestly, it's one of the most cancerous things that it could be positive.
It is, and that's why I don't even speak negatively about even Flow Wrestling or whoever it is, right, that are talking about like all this stuff, saying traitor or whatever, because I do think they do a great job promoting the sport of wrestling.
There's just one person who said that.
Yeah, and it's just not worth mentioning, because I think, like I said, I mean, I'm just trying to bring a positive light. I want to, wrestling was almost not in the Olympics in 2020.
Right.
We had to save Olympic wrestling.
True. Yeah, that's something a lot of people
So the last thing I want to do is bring a negative light on the sport.
Yeah.
Like, and it's all positive for me. I'm trying to, and that's one thing about San Marino. We talk about San Marino is like, that's a country that never had wrestling before.
Right.
Me and Malik brought wrestling to that country, and we're talking about putting on clinics and, looking to start a club for freestyle wrestling there.
Right.
They have some coaches that want to start freestyle wrestling, and that's something that would have never happened had we not, made that decision,
right,
made that leap of faith.
Right. And did you guys have to fundraise at all for that? I think people don't realize too that there was no club, right? And that's something you started.
For San Marino?
Yeah.
No,
we didn't have to fundraise anything, but we did have to,
because there was no wrestling program until you guys got there.
There wasn't. The great thing about San Marino is they're independent republic, and
super supportive too.
They're super supportive. I mean, they don't have a lot of Olympic athletes, so for me and Mal to come in as high level athletes right from the start,
right.
They, like you said, super supportive financially. Doing everything they can just to make sure that our travel and stuff to our tournaments, there's all that stuff is just taken care of. And as far as, starting the club, like, they were able to waive a fee for, they just have taken really good care of us. And just to make sure everybody knows it's all legal, whatever they've been doing. Right. Like, it's everything that they've been doing is just, it's been great. It's been a great, support
right.
dealing with their Olympic
going through all that too.
Exactly. It's really important because maybe they would look at us and say there's these guys from the US, they're half in, half out, but
right.
No, they're all in on us.
Right. And that's like we just said, that's going through that process. I can't even imagine how complicated it can be. So having a strong support system is huge, and that kind of leads into what I want to talk about next before we start to wrap it up here. How important, I want you to speak on how important it is too. We talk about surrounding yourself with people, and that's we already went over that, but the support system behind you too, because it's not necessarily that you need to surround yourself with 500 people, but it's good to have like your group of 10 people that you surround yourself with that help you get to the next level. But it's also important too to have a big support system behind you, right? We're all really biased to say that the Amin family is super supportive, but it really is. It really is. I mean, you qualified for the Olympics, and the next day you had like and the Melaronis too, your mom's side.
Yeah.
You had like 20 people buying tickets to Tokyo to come watch you wrestle.
Yeah.
Literally within 24 hours. So how important is it to have that support system behind you, and how does it make you feel when you're going on the mat, or when you're going to take a test at Michigan, and that's gonna, you know, basically depict if you're gonna get in a roster or not? You know, just everything in life, not just wrestling. How important is it to have that strong support system behind you, knowing that there's always someone there to get your back?
It's really, it's funny that you bring that story up, because like when we were talking about like Tokyo, I had friends from high school, like, you know, just like good friends from high school, but I hadn't caught up with them in a couple of years, like texting me that they're literally looking at flights to book to Tokyo.
Right.
Like, and they're like seriously considering, not like joking, like, you know, I'm coming to Tokyo. Like, these guys are all in on going to Tokyo. Right. And, you know, it just shows that, you know, I do have like this support system that I even forget about sometimes, that like there's people that are rooting for me about, like, you know, behind the scenes, that, you know, from all over, from all angles. And, you know, there's always that saying, it's like, would you rather have like 10 lion or 100 sheep? And it's like, I think I have 100 lions, literally. Right. Yeah. Like, you know, I'm surrounded by so many great people. I mean, between our family and then, you know, on both sides, and, you know, just the area that I grew up in, and then the high school and the Michigan connection, and then just, you know, all these other connections. It's like just genuine, you know, really good people that, you know, maybe you wouldn't necessarily know like who they are. They're not like all like, you know, really loud, like people that, you know, like try to, they're kind of more behind the scenes. Is what I'm trying to say, is like, you know,
passive.
Yeah. They don't need to, you know, put a big Instagram post out to support me or anything like that. Or, you know, it's just, it's all, you know, I know they're there for me. Like, you know, I know if I was in the trenches, they were the kind of people that would have my back. Right. And there's literally like, you know, hundreds of people like that I'm surrounded by, which is just like,
it's that passive support. They don't have, like you just said, they don't have to shout and yell for you to know that they're there supporting you. Right.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. I mean, and I think those are the kind of people that are great, because, you know, they're not doing it for themselves. Right. They literally have your back. Right. And, it is something that maybe even it takes me sometimes. I forget about it, and then I have to go back and be like grateful and appreciative for it. Right. Like, you know, that's like those moments where I think this is super important. I don't even do it enough. Is like, you know, you get down on yourself, or, you know, you're in your training or something like that. You know, you start to think negatively, and then you think about how many people that are either like relying or you are rooting for you. Right. And that's something that I have that maybe not a lot of people do have. Like, I really, there's like another saying back from high school. It's like, or even Michigan, who's got it better than us? Right. You know, nobody. And that's literally how I feel. Is like, when it comes to my support staff, like I'll take my squad versus your squad any day of the week.
Yeah, of course. And that drives a lot of fire, I'm sure, in your belly to dig deep when in those moments, like you said, when it's like, damn, I don't know if I have it in me. And then you realize that you do have that support system and people pushing for you, and it helps you push forward. Yeah. So that's another thing too. That's something super important. A lot of successful people follow a lot of the same patterns. You start to break it down when you want to become successful, and it relates to their support system, who they hang out with, and that's what drives their mindset every day, right? Good. So I want to wrap up here. I want to ask a few more questions. Some of them are just some fun questions. I think I might know the answers to them, but there's a lot of people listening that probably don't. Wow. A lot of wrestlers nowadays are transitioning from wrestling. There's a lot of money and fame to be made in fighting in UFC and MMA. As I know that you have a really impressive business resume built up for yourself, that you have planned for after wrestling, but has your opinion swayed on maybe transitioning into fighting after wrestling, or is that something that's completely off the table?
No, I could see myself becoming a fighter.
Really?
Yeah, you know, the UFC no, I'm just kidding.
I was gonna say, I'm like, there's no way.
I think I might have a shot though.
Malik's
he's
got an unorthodox weird style.
Tony Ferguson.
You know, I never want to just count something out completely. Right. But when it comes to fighting, I'm a lover, not a fighter. I seriously think that's how it is. And
Of course.
Obviously, a lot of it too, as I think my mom would disown me as a son.
Yeah.
Oh, my mom hates it.
My dad is all about it, right?
He loves it.
He got used to get in. I mean, our dads are the same way. Like they used to fight all the time back when it was like acceptable back in the 80s. You know, you'd handle it over.
You beat
with
somebody
your
up and then
fists,
go
not-
buy him a beer.
And I think that attitude's changed, but they haven't changed necessarily with the times. Where like my dad like loves the fighting, and that's why UFC is so popular for them.
Right.
And but I wouldn't say I would like to train it for sure. And if I trained it and I fell in love with it, then who am I to say that right now that I'm not going to do it?
Right.
But because I've never really trained it, to be honest. I've only gotten hit in the. Me and Malik actually just we'll joke around.
We actually do. It's kind of funny.
We'll simulate UFC fights. Just a lot of times it's just to the tap out. It's
Who
not
wins?
to like knock out.
Miles usually gets me, but I've gotten him like hooked his legs and did some crazy stuff, and I
Malik
tapped him
gets like
out.
leg locks and stuff like that. Like, he's weird about it. But I think let's bring this question back once I actually.
He's got to graduate,
Right, yeah,
or
of
he's got to
and
finish
then
his
maybe
career.
it'd be funny. Maybe one day I'll be on the show as a UFC fighter.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
who knows?
I-
you've already accomplished so much. What's
Yeah, I
I'm
know.
sure if I want to do it and I really set my mind to it, I could do that. But
Right.
it's just like, do I want to? I don't know yet.
Right. I
Yeah.
mean, you still have to focus on.
Yeah.
You got the NCAAs.
Yeah, I have one more year of school.
Yeah.
I got a
Right.
master's program to finish up and
Right.
stuff like that. So
Yeah, I'll ask the tough question. What's the lineup gonna look like next year?
Yeah, it's a hell of a lineup. I mean, for real though, I mean that could be Michigan's best lineup in a long time.
I think of all
ever.
time. Almost.
I mean,
think ever.
Yeah.
you go back to lineup of our fathers when they beat Iowa, right?
Yeah.
That was a freaking hammer of a lineup.
yeah, that was when Iowa was.
But this lineup could be even better than that, right? And I know my dad and Uncle Mike listening will probably laugh at this part and say hell no, but
no, I think that
They agree.
Yeah, they agree, and I think
everybody agrees.
There's really so much talent, just pent up. That there's guys that obviously you look at the big guns, right? Like between people have already put in that work with like Stevan, Mason, myself, Logan,
right.
all returning. Well, Mason not a returning All-American necessarily, but we had multiple guys that probably would have been returning All-Americans this
I mean,
year.
shit, you have 2 Olympians on your lineup.
Two
I know.
Olympians,
Doesn't
a
happen
junior
often.
world champion, Mason Parrish,
Possible Olympian.
who still can qualify. I mean, we have like 3 other guys that could probably have a good shot at qualifying for the Olympics.
Right.
And then, between our at 125, it's going to be a great. Jack Medley just keeps getting better. The dude just like, he's
The guy's running marathons.
he's
like
a
twice
workhorse.
I know.
And I always give him shout outs because he deserves them. Like
Right.
it's not because like there's no hype around him.
Yeah,
Like,
there's not.
He does the work.
Right.
Like a lot of people
Well, we just talked about it, surrounding yourself. I mean,
he's even that's
9
like
other
a younger
people
guy
ran
that's
marathons.
influencing me.
Right, I mean-
I'm going to run a half marathon in the next 2 weeks.
I might
because
too.
Of Jack, he's been on me every day, and he's annoying about it.
right.
It's like, you gonna run?
I'm like, I hate running, so it's
So
like,
do I.
for him to keep texting me about it, I'm like, man, this guy doesn't get I'm not a runner, and then I'm
Right.
like, you know what, like. That's part of it. Is the
Right.
fact that I don't
Well,
think
super
I'm a runner.
powerful. He took something you hated and turned
and
it
I
into
got to
something
do it,
that you
and he's
got
going
to
to make me to do it.
Right.
So, Jack, and then 33 is Stevan, 41 still a toss up, but you got like Drew Matten, Joey Silva,
Right.
just a lot of studs around that way. And then 49 Kanan Storr,
Right.
who can beat the best guy in the country if he's on. 57 Will Lewan,
Right.
and this is all speculative, by the way.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. This is.
And then you got
speculative.
even at 25 too. You add Kirk Henry to the mix. Too.
Yeah,
He's got
Kurt-
possibly one of the best technique in the
Absolutely,
country.
Cannot count
definitely
out
not
Kurt.
counting Kurt out.
Yeah.
But some guys could take another Olympic red shirt this year.
Right.
You just don't know.
You just don't know. It's just a lot of gray area.
And then you look at
Start to get up top.
between 57 through 74. No particular order. You have like
that's good.
Cameron. Cameron Amin, who's going to be a freshman, redshirt freshman this year, who's going to make some noise. Promise you.
Right.
Will Lewan, who's just he's a stingy wrestler. He's a guy that can if he becomes a little bit more offensive compete for a national title,
course.
which he's going to.
Yeah.
And I don't even say if he does, it's going to be, it's
impossible
the
to score
kind
on.
of guys that he's going to be
I'm
wrestling
sure he's
with in
been
the room
working
every
on
day.
that too.
Absolutely.
For a whole summer.
And the guys he's wrestling with in the room, he's just going to continue to, make huge gains. And then, Logan Mass is a guy that he might have had a rough NCAA tournament for 2 years, but you look at he just won the U.S. Open.
Right.
Yeah.
Kyle Lewis.
People forget that.
You can't say that guy's not in the national title hunt.
Right.
He is.
He's
And
beating
he
all
beat
those
the
guys.
national
He might be the
champion,
favorite.
US Open. He could be the favorite coming in,
Right.
So,
I think he's starting to get his mind right too. He was in that slump like we were talking about.
Yeah, and then taking an Olympic red shirt was so good for him.
Right.
Just getting, international wrestling really does kind of refresh. It gives you like kind of a reset button on wrestling, I think.
Of course.
And then, 84 through heavyweight. We'll just say, between myself, Jelani Embry, Andrew Davison, Mason Parrish. Like,
Of course.
Just and I'm
And a couple talented freshmen too.
Yeah, and if I'm forgetting anybody, obviously,
Well, it's all speculation, right?
Yeah, it's just no hard feelings.
Because the bottom line is whoever shows up is who wins.
Yeah, of
It
course.
doesn't matter.
Because for me, I'm just looking at it from one perspective. There could be a guy that's freaking just grinding in his gym right now,
Right, licking
now.
his chops to get his hands on the guy that thinks
I don't
he's
even
going to
know
be
that. That's what this quarantine has done. It's
Right.
like I could give you a way better kind of speculation of our lineup if I was with these guys for the last 3 months.
No,
Right.
but you're not.
It's who's been putting in the work while we've had this time off.
Right.
And I can't promise that it was there's some guys that I was around, but I think that's something that Michigan's been doing really well though. It's like we've been holding each other accountable over this quarantine to make sure hey, everybody's grinding, I think.
Right.
So it's just going to be who's going to be the better of the two, and both of them are going to be great.
Right. And I'm sure it's going to even feel more rewarding because you just said it. Like, you have your team pushing you, right? But it's really, throughout this quarantine, it's been interesting because it's really on your own.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to be the next guy to wrestle Michigan's tough lineup next year, what are you doing during this quarantine, right? Because it's not structured at all. So, good. So,
I think that's it.
well, before we wrap up, a few more questions, Myles. You got an interesting training regimen and you got an interesting diet. You're gaining a lot of weight, gaining a lot of muscle to fill out the position, the Olympic position you're wrestling at. So what is that like? What has your workout routine and diet plan been like to gain that true muscle, right?
Yeah.
It's not just all supplements, right? I don't think you really take any.
No, I don't take too many supplements.
A little bit of bar with stuff.
It's funny. I have the UWW just constantly on me now.
Right.
They have to know where I am at all times.
Right.
Literally, I got to sign on to this app and tell them where I'm at 24 hours of the day, pretty much. Share my location so they can drug test me at any time. And that's why I don't really mess around with supplements. Is just because sometimes you just can't trust products, right?
Never.
I mean, I know I like to eat clean to begin with, and so that made me even more speculative, cautious on just buying certain proteins or stuff like that. I stick to. Really, the only thing that's really consistent for me is all the Barwish stuff because I know I trust Mike Barwish and Dan Moses with my life. So
Right.
They've been he's been helping me with both my strength conditioning and then my nutrition. I kind of been all in on those guys for a while. So when I told him I wanted to get to 205, 200 pounds. He gave me a few, different tips. I've been taking this whey protein, and then the only other thing is a meal replacement. It's not really necessarily
MRP,
a supplement.
yeah.
But other than that, I've just been forced to get in the gym, lift a ton.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been at Barwish Methods in the cave.
You're destined to
those
build
are my
muscle.
two sponsors for this
Quarantine.
He's not getting paid. He's not getting paid. Don't worry.
But I mean, between those two, and then just really, it has been kind of a challenge to eat more calories than I'm burning.
Right.
Because obviously, going through some pretty tough workouts, and then trying to already battle this metabolism that I have. That's
Right.
it'll work for me later in life, but right now I'm
Working against
I'm
you.
resenting it. Yeah.
Right.
And so, I mean, I've just been trying to eat really healthy. I mean, I ate a lot of eggs, a lot of steak, a lot of chicken.
Right.
Pretty just basic diet,
And that's really all there is to it. I mean,
Yeah.
there's this because you get people that they buy $600-$700 worth of supplements, and it's just so crazy. Like, where you pump your body with all this stuff that's made in a lab, right? And you can. I'm not saying that all supplements are bad, because there's definitely a lot that are, helpful, but you don't have to have supplements to get big, right?
No.
It's just a process.
Yeah.
And patterns.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
Following patterns. So. Good. So the last question I have for you before we finish up, and it's definitely a open range question because it could go anyway, but you've accomplished so much already, right? Becoming an Olympian at 22 years old. We shy away from it. It kind of outshines everything, but even being a college athlete, that's a hell of an accomplishment already.
3-time All-American.
It's like 3% of high school athletes move on to college, and out of that, even 1% goes to D1. So you're already a small percentage of the population, the things you've accomplished. What's next for Myles Amine? Because it's interesting when you look at somebody who's done a lot in their life, and you take that away from them. So if we take away wrestling from Myles Amine has still accomplished a shit ton of things, right? Yeah. So what's next for Myles Amine after he has his Olympic run and after he finishes up wrestling in the NCAA and graduates?
Well, I have this master's program coming up. Going to be doing a master of sport management at Michigan. So, I think that'll be a great, addition to my undergrad degree, which was in business. And I know that there's going to be a huge void after wrestling. And so it's something that I've been battling, like even now, knowing that, that clock might be starting to tick a little bit faster and that time's coming around. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do, to be honest. It's something that I definitely got to do some soul searching for. And I think that this is kind of like what I was telling you, though, with earlier in the podcast, when we were talking about being short-sighted. I think that after all this is done, it's going to be the same thing. Like, all the goals are going to reset, and then I'm going to have to be short-sighted about something else. Like,
right, because you don't want to fall in like a postpartum.
Yeah, I don't want to exactly where I'm just, just
slump.
wasting the day and, just not accomplishing anything. Like, if you set these high goals in athletics, when you're done, you should be doing the same thing. You shouldn't be going around doing your victory lap, trying to, relive the past. Yeah. Like, that's not who I am at all. So I don't really think I see myself doing that at all. I know I definitely want to make some noise in the business industry, and whether that's financial industry or consulting. But I definitely want to do some stuff to give back. That's a big thing that when I was a freshman in college, I didn't necessarily think of. I wasn't necessarily as self-aware to notice that, like, there's a lot of issues in the world going on right now. Like, even in the U.S. itself, like there's a lot of stuff, even probably in the next few weeks that will like be, go down in our history books. So
2020 is a hell of a year.
Yeah. And so, that stuff just made me more self-aware that, like, hey, we need a lot more hands helping people up than pushing them down, and you got your two hands for a reason. And I want to use those hands to kind of like serve and help other people. So as much as, I have lofty goals for, making a living for myself and, being successful for myself, I want to do that to kind of, work towards helping other people too.
Awesome. Well, you've heard Myles Amine speak on a lot of different topics, and hopefully it's something you can get out of this, whether it's, surrounding yourself with the right people to get to where you want to get to, finding that level of support that you need to get there, and then making sure you're setting those goals for yourself, writing them down, and not just writing them down, but figuring out the steps you need to take to get there. So, Myles, we thank you for being the first guest. Next week, we have another impressive guest on the show. I won't say his or her name yet, but you'll sure to be in for another treat. And thank you, Myles, for coming on the show and doing this with me.
Yeah,
thanks, Myles.
Thanks for having me. Love you guys.
Love you too, man.
All right, yalla.